I think that the biggest challenge I had was some people not believing in you, and that hurts, I think if you're a second-time founder, it's easy because today I just see see investors and ecosystem players easily just believe in Utiva and any other thing that I'm building, and that's the validation, right? But not having that proof of success at the beginning was the challenge, because I sometimes today when I share some of my 2019, 2018 experiences with my team, they just really marvel. People just get surprised, like, wow. So this guy literally sent you this email and said, I don't think there's a business and training in Nigeria. I was just telling my team yesterday, some guys that said, I don't think Nigerians will ever pay for training, and we've done 2 billion. So not having people really believe in you was the first challenge that I really experienced.
Thank you for coming on, Aisha.
Thank you so much.
You have been a significant force in the tech industry. I would say, at least within my own sphere of people that I see that are making a sort of impact or are putting effort into growing the technology ecosystem. So can you introduce yourself a bit so people get to know you?
I mean, I should. Eyitayo is my name. Spent all my life doing 3 things, project management, now it's called product management, partnership and sales, but majorly in the tech space. I mean, I came from the international development space. I worked with Creative Associates in the US. I came back to Nigeria. I joined AfriSons as Vice President, Business Development and Partnership. Then moved back to the UK to do my master's in Business Strategy, Leadership and Change as a Chevening Scholar. Then move around a little bit here and there, just kind of like trying to learn more about the ecosystem. But significantly became an entrepreneur in 2019. I mean, I've always led businesses, right back from 2010. But I would say 2019 was when I decided to settle in and then go all in as an entrepreneur.
I see. Quite interesting. But minus that, who is Eyitayo?
Yeah. So Eyitayo is the first child of my father and my mother. Grew up, lived all my life in Lagos. I think the only time I left Lagos was when I was in my junior secondary school, where I went to Ekiti State to school for 3 years and then came back again to Lagos. I was a church boy. Grew up
You
in
said
church.
was.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a church boy. I mean, I'm still a church boy. It's just that the way I was brought up, to sleep and wake up in the church, read the Bible. I read the Bible back to back 4 times. Attended a couple of Bible quiz competition, won multiple times. But these days it's just business, and all that. Then on the other side, aside tech, I also have a ranch. Where I'm quite excited about agriculture. I don't know why, but it's just a part of me that loves seeing the animals move around. And another exciting part of me is I'm quite very local. I'm a traditional local chief. Maybe I shouldn't bring that on the podcast, but
No, that's fine.
But I'm a traditional local chief. I'm the Mayegun of Agege Kingdom.
I see. Interesting. So when you say you have a ranch, you actually mean here in Nigeria?
Yes, here in Nigeria. It's in Ofada in Ogun State. Yeah.
Interesting. Ranch, not farm.
Yeah, so ranch is a type of farm, Yeah. So we've got a ranch where we rear animals, goats, cows, sheep, ram, right there at the ranch.
So what do you think was the significant force? Because you said ranching, if that's the word, and also Christianity was a strong part of it. So what do you think was the significant force that pushed you towards tech and talent acquisition?
So it's my personal story, and it's it's a story that it's quite very frustrating because I could have missed it in life, left the university, as a very energetic and exciting young guy, got to the job market, and couldn't find a job. And I know that this story is quite common among, Nigerians, but the significance for me is I could have gone to do something else, It could have been cybercrime, because I had energy. I was so super energetic. I was a young guy, very intelligent, energy, moving from one place to another place, and just kind of like trying to look for success and couldn't find it. The first year went by 2011. The second year went by 2012. I met a mentor who told me about the tech space. This guy just got back from the US and he was telling us we're in the conference, and he was saying everything that had happened in the US at that time was going to happen in Nigeria. And I was this guy, I was just sitting at the back listening to him. I'm like, okay, everything that happened in the US was going to happen in Nigeria. So I took a step back and I asked myself, what is the most significant and interesting thing that was happening in the US at that time? And this was 2012. At 2012, there was no Paystack, there was no Andela, there was no Flutterwave, there was no Jumia, there was all the tech startups there and the tech companies that we really admire today. Many of them didn't exist as at 2012. So I started studying the US, landscape and the business terrain, and I saw the tech ecosystem, and I saw a boom. I saw a fast rising, ecosystem. So I made up my mind that I was going to come into tech, So I started learning project management in the IT space. I met another mentor who gave me an opportunity to start a consult with him on a project he was doing at CBN. I did that for 1 year, and I got lucky. In 2015, I applied for a fellowship program in the US that kind of like places you to work with one of the leading institutions or organizations in the US. And that was my first, big opportunity. So I moved to the US in 2015, started working with Creative Associates. Now, when I started working with Creative Associates, I was a product manager. So one of my jobs was to do a desk research on some of the top talents that we could hire. And those top talents were coming from India. They're coming from Estonia. They're coming from the Philippines. They were coming from Egypt. I think we hired about 2 people from Egypt, but none from Nigeria. None from Nigeria, none from Ghana, none from Uganda, none from Kenya. And I was a Nigerian sitting among all these guys. So I said, how come 200 million people were not being hired into this, space? So I saw the very big gap, and I made up my mind in 2017 that I was going to. So I think the defining moments would be the moment of unemployment, that I couldn't find a job, the moment of having a mentor that told me about the tech ecosystem in the US that was a boom, and that was going to be replicated in Nigeria. And another moment was the fact that I was in the US there, I was in DC, and we couldn't find a lot of Nigerians that were working in the tech space. So I said, you know what? It looks like many Nigerians had the same experience that I had. We're leaving university and they couldn't move into new jobs because there wasn't, a structured program to mentor them and train them and equip them for the market. So I said I was going to do this. But then I didn't know that I was going to do it as an entrepreneur. I thought I was going to join Andela. So I applied to be the head of operations of Andela, but I couldn't get the job. And I was like, if Andela is not going to give me the job, I'm going to do my thing, And I started Utiva. I started running my thing, yeah.
I see. Quite interesting. So I would like to pick the point of, first and foremost, it's very important that when you couldn't get a job and you wanted to move into tech, the instant thought was not, let me start programming, because I think that's actually like stifles many people currently. Because whenever they think of tech, they do not know of the 1 million non-coding jobs that's around tech. Right. Absolutely. Even where I work currently, developers are very essential. No one is saying they are not essential. But when you count the team members, developers are not half of the team members.
You know what our research,
project managers, BAs.
You know what our research shows? Only 15% of a tech company are actually engineers and developers. Only 15%. People don't talk about business analysts, those that work with the clients, product managers, technology sales, product designers. These are non-coding skills that are super essential. So we all don't have to be, software engineers, data scientists. There are opportunities, 1,001 opportunities out there that are non-coding. So I agree with you totally.
Yeah, I agree too. I think if a person cannot figure out programming, if you think it's not your thing, it does not mean you cannot fully engage in the tech ecosystem. The tech space, right. So that's actually an essential lesson for many. The other thing also is, you mentioned India as one of the, even till now, they are still at the top.
Correct.
And when it comes to technology talent that is being outsourced outside, I actually think they should probably be a model we as Nigerians and Africans should be looking at.
Correct.
Because there is hardly any room that I get into now that they are not in there.
Correct.
And it is an exhibition of excellence on their parts. And I actually think we have both the population, as you've said, and the talents, the right people to actually become such, right? So what do you think are the essential things we are missing?
I don't think that as a country we are missing. I think as a country we haven't just, doubled down to say, hey, we really want to go into the space. In my research, and I started researching India aggressively some 2 years ago, and 5 things that I find in common, Indians and Africans or Indians and Nigerians. The population, the youth population is quite high. The number of tertiary institutions that we have in Nigeria, and India is quite on the high side. And the number of non-tertiary institutions that are categorized as, colleges that we have. It's like every corner that you get to in India, you find a college, you find a school. It's almost the same thing in Nigeria everywhere you go. Sometimes you even get to a place and you're like, so there's a private university here. So there is a polytechnics here. It's like there's a polytechnic in every little city you get to or town that you get to in Nigeria. The top thing is the internet penetration that we have. Or let me use the word adoption of internet. Literally every young person in Nigeria has a mobile phone and is online, either stalking, online or on social media, ranting on social media, posting on social media, the same reality in India. But then when you go outside the tech space, in terms of culture, right, India has got a very diverse culture. The same thing with Nigerians. We've got a very diverse culture. It's like, if I ask you now your background, it's pretty much going to be different from mine. We might be from the Yoruba tribe together, but then the cultural, beliefs and all that are totally different. And when you look at the quality of people we have in Nigeria, Nigerians are very aggressive. When they set their mind to do something, they go all in, they do it. The same thing with Indians. When they set their minds to do something, they go all and do it. But the reality now is that as a country, we now need to wake up to the situation that, hey, we've got the advantage, we've got the talent, we've got the internet penetration, we've got the, internet acceptability, mobile phone adoption is high. Our young people are quite very intelligent and smart. We've got the population, 65% of people in Nigeria, almost 210 million people are young people, right? We need to put all that together and begin to export our talent. And I appreciate the government for now waking up to that reality. When you're broke, you won't have a choice than to wake up to how do we make more money. So Nigeria has woken up to that reality that we have a talent pool. Now we have to start to export our talent. And there are certain strategies that the government and other private institutions that are playing in that space are then putting together. I can go on and talk about that, but I'll pause here and see if you've got other.
So before exporting, I think there is a very important aspect, which is actually the training.
Yeah, the development.
So development before exporting. So we don't export substandard, right? So speaking about the training, I think before we go into that, let's touch on Utiva, which is probably the first startup you said you went into after the Andela.
And Andela rejected me.
rejection. So why was Utiva formed? What is the impact? And what was the particular goal behind the formation of Utiva?
So when I started Utiva, I had just one thing in mind: to replicate myself, to find other young people that just want to be successful in the tech space and give them the essential tools. And when I think about essential tools, I think about it from 3 different, I call it the triangle, for success, in the tech space. Number 1 is the real and substantial deep training that you need to receive. And you talked about, development, training and development. Then the second part is the coaching, because training is not coaching, right? The coaching to really prepare you for jobs, right? And the third one is your first opportunity. And that opportunity can be in form of an internship. It can be in form of an apprenticeship. It can be anything. And that's the triangle that we built in the Utiva model, right? We've trained almost about 100,000 people. We're now a team of about 55 persons. We've got a presence of students coming from over 22 countries right now. We've got a presence, a physical office in Lagos and in the UK. We are more interested right now because we've done training all our lives. We are now super interested in unraveling the two other opportunities that exist, which is placing a lot of talent into jobs and helping companies then outsource to them also. So if you cannot hire them directly as full-time employees, then you can also outsource to them as contractors. And those are the two things that we are unraveling right now. So I think we've done so much in the tech space, because when you also think about the companies that we've worked with, HP has funded us to do a project, Facebook has funded us to do a project. We've worked with the likes of Diageo. 9 of the banks in Nigeria, we're working with them. Some international companies like Anden Foundation in Dubai, MIT Solve in the US, these are all organizations that have funded us to do projects here and there. So it looks like we've done training. And we're not the only one even doing the training. We have now many startups are kind of like replicating the Utiva training model. Every time I wake up and I go, and this is what I find interesting. Every time I wake up and I go on my LinkedIn, I see the CEO of another training organization, checking me up on LinkedIn. And the next time when I check their website, I see that they have copied something that we have done before. I'm like, okay, we've all done training, and we have a pool. We have a very, very large pool of talent. But you wouldn't know how solid the talent ecosystem of Nigeria is until we unravel and open up the other side, which is placement and hiring. That's when you would know that Nigerians are super smart. So that girl that just learned cybersecurity, you wouldn't know how super brilliant the girl is until you place a girl into a job in India or in the US. That's when you will see that the girl knows ABC and has the capacity to learn DEFG. And really become very solid. So we need to solve for finding companies to hire the talents that we've got, on the continent or in Nigeria. Yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge? And let's speak about the biggest challenge when you first started Utiva. We are going to go to post-training, but what was the biggest challenge actually like building Utiva up? Probably for that CEO that is trying to copy you so that he would know certain things that he has to deal with.
I think that the biggest challenge I had was some people not believing in you, and that hurts, I think if you're a second-time founder, it's easy because today I just see investors and ecosystem players easily just believe in Utiva and any other thing that I'm building. And that's the validation, right? But not having that proof of success at the beginning was the challenge, because I sometimes today when I share some of my 2019, 2018 experiences with my team, they just really marvel. People just get surprised, like, oh, wow. So this guy literally sent you this email and said, I don't think there's a business and training in Nigeria. I was just telling my team yesterday, some guys that said, I don't think Nigerians will ever pay for trading. And we've done 2 billion, So not having people really believe in you was the first challenge that I really experienced. But I got lucky again, because I think I get lucky most times, So I had the likes of Nubi Coyote, people would just say, you know what, I don't think there's value in this thing, but I'm just going to support this guy, and help him build. I think that was just the first major thing. And usually when I talk to entrepreneurs these days, I also try not to replicate the same mistake and error. So I just, if I don't believe in what you're building, I still try to throw my support and support you and cheerlead you and inspire you, because the job of entrepreneurs is to really do the impossible.
So I feel the pain of Nigerians do not pay for training. So currently, the African XR community, which I founded, we train a lot of people around 3D, Blender, Unity, game development. And mostly we run it for free because there is that thought at the back of our mind that Nigerians, especially youth in school, would not have the money to pay. So I do know that paying for courses, because I have paid for a lot of courses, I do know that brings a certain level of value even to the person paying, because there is a level of attention that you have to put to it. Let's say you were doing a course on maybe Udemy where you have to pay $200 every month. You would put more zeal into that than what was given to you for free. So there's definitely the advantage of paying for things. But how did you get them to pay for it? Or was it just showing them the value to it?
I think there are three things, and I talk about this a lot, right? When you're building something, there's always the first, adopters. Maybe that's not where the real value is. But the job of an entrepreneur is to be the evangelist of what you're building. It doesn't matter if investors don't believe in it; they are not your customers. It doesn't matter if the ecosystem doesn't believe in it; they are not your customers. You need to focus aggressively on the customers and evangelize to them. And evangelism is, if you look at the concept of evangelism is the most ridiculous thing, because sometimes you're driving along the road and then you see an evangelist on the roadside making noise, and it could be irritating to you because you're like, why is this guy making noise on the roadside? No one is ever going to listen to you. But that's the job of an evangelist, to make a lot of noise about what you're doing, such that people then begin to say, I will try it out. I will see if this is value. And then it doesn't matter if what you're building is so good. You need to be the evangelist. You need to make a lot of noise. Until today, I don't do a day without posting multiple times on my social media about what I'm doing. I do it so well that even if you don't like it, your subconscious begins to believe it. And that's the first level. The second level is then getting other people to do the same thing with you. So you're not just the only one doing that. So one of the things we do at Utiva is then to bring on leaders in the ecosystem, people who have done it and become successful, and get them on board to say, you know what, come be a guest at one of our master classes, come, talk to people and share your success story, because one thing I've learned is that people are aspiring. People aspire for something. There is, I think it's the Maslow hierarchy of needs that also, validates that. People have this internal yearn for more, to become more. And the third one will be you need to, maybe not, that is not really important, but that's one of the things that we've done to give people opportunity to test it. So you do a freemium, you give people opportunity to do we do something that's called a taster session, where you come and taste Utiva, you come and taste what the experience looks like. And if you love it, then you enroll. Your work as an entrepreneur is to be a salesperson and an evangelist of what you're building, and making a lot of noise, talking to people. I always tell my mentees that you have to do 15 calls every day. Not 15 sales calls, 15 partnership calls, talking to partners, talking to other players in the space, and your team. At Utiva, we do 30 calls per day. Each person, 30 calls per day. That means you have to be aggressive about talking to your customers, because nothing sells itself. All this idea of, this product is so good, it sells itself, doesn't exist. People sell what you think sells itself. People sell it. And part of selling it is packaging it, that it talks and it speaks for itself. And that's one of the things that I've learned and that I've also advised entrepreneurs to do. Yeah.
I see. So for your training course, do you leverage on technology? Is it physical training?
So when we started, we were doing physical training, and then
in Lagos?
In Lagos. We had 9 facilities in Lagos. We had 1 facility in Port Harcourt, 1 in Abuja when we started. And then COVID happened in 2020. And that kind of took our number from 1 to 5, and we started doing 5 times of our revenue, 5 times of our numbers, right? So we have today one of the most, that I have seen, one of the most robust learning infrastructure, right? It helps you to ensure that the students are learning, that if they don't complete and interact with the material, they don't move to the next stage. It helps to ensure that, the students work on multiple projects. It helps to ensure that they do assessment at every touch point. We get a very robust analytics behind, to know how many students are learning, how many of them are dropping off, how many hours did they spend in class, are they engaging, was the engagement rate in class. It's also multi-currency today. So if you're based in Nigeria, you see Naira. If you're based in the UK, you see pounds, So all that infrastructure is what we have built, that we are leveraging on to accelerate how people actually learn.
So a Udemy sort of platform?
I wouldn't call it a Udemy, because a Udemy is self-paced. So you enroll on a Udemy and then you learn on your own. But here, it's a hybrid. It's a combination of you learn on your own, and then on weekends, You come to a class where you then interact, with the trainers, you interact with the coaches, and then the coaches get a lot of feedback. And at the back end, we then get analytics of how the students are doing in the live class. So I think the major value with Utiva is, the opportunity to interact with the coaches, interact with the mentors. Because remember I said that it's a triangle, and the mentoring and the coaching part is very important to us. So on the other platforms, the Udemy and the Coursera, you wouldn't get that. Udacity, you wouldn't get that. But on Utiva, you will get that mentorship, that feel of talking to someone, getting a direct feedback from someone about your performance. That's the experience.
So not totally virtual. There's an augmentation with physical.
No, it's not physical. The live classes are online.
Okay.
So you're sitting down online with a trainer. You don't go to any physical location. You go on Udemy, you're just watching videos and, but here you watch the videos and then there's a live class online. Maybe let me use the word online live classes where you sit down with the coaches online and then you learn from them. Yeah.
I see. Okay. So I think we've beat the horse around training talents a lot. How do you see then the future of work evolving? Yeah. So now there are talents already trained or talents being trained. Yeah. So what is the next step after talent is trained, which you already pointed out was connecting them to opportunities. But so what do you see that? How is that like, and what has been your move towards improving that?
Yeah. Let me talk about the opportunity that we see here. The first opportunity is Africa is a 1.2 billion people's market. 65% of that, that's about 700 million people, are young people. Another interesting thing is that in the past 30 years, Africa's middle class has grown by almost 30%, right? And the income level has also risen by almost 10 times. And that's also interesting that now we have over 300 million Africans that are categorized within the middle class or fast rising into the middle class within the space of 5 years, right? That is a market, that is an opportunity. So the first thing that we are cheerleading is getting more organizations to copy our model, right? And train more people across Africa. So for example, we are at the point now that we are talking to hundreds of partners in Uganda, in Kenya, in Botswana, giving them what we have done to replicate. But the bigger opportunity that we realize is that 10 million companies in the next 20 years would want to go global from the talent place side of things. 10 million companies would have to hire internationally, So these companies are looking for talent. So they run to the likes of India, they run to the likes of, Philippines, And the next stop is Africa for some certain reasons, Nigeria, for example, will speak the British English. In terms of time zone, our time zone aligns with the entire Europe, the UK, right? And that is great. But the internet penetration and all this things I talked about is value. So one of the things that we have done is to launch a subsidiary company called Fleet. So Fleet has just one single mission, right? Which is export this talent without draining the country of its talent pool. And how do you do that? By outsourcing. That means that talents can work with international organizations, international companies without leaving their country, right? And that is quite very unique. And several economies have done that, right? Or several countries have done that. So in Nigeria right now, what we are doing is setting up the system to help companies abroad, hire the talents from here, while we give all these talents the right work environment, the right technology, the tools. The tools can be as interesting as a power bank, so that you don't go off or offline. The right internet, if you want to come work from our facility, the right co-working environment, co-working space, the right technology to help those employers to measure performance, right? Because these employers are paying for those that we outsourced to them. So that's pretty much what we are doing right now. We're quite very early on that, like the training side that we've done so much. We're still very early. And my job is then to travel around the world to talk to organizations and say, hey, Africa has got a pool of talent. And I've done that a couple of times. And the first reaction I always get is, are you sure? And I say, you know what? come test it.
I think there are many talents demonstrating their capability currently.
Correct.
At least people that come from Nigeria.
Correct.
I mean,
Andela has done it.
Yeah, exactly. I would say friends around me, even myself, have taken projects from outside. That's the sort of demonstration that I'm talking about. But one thing about companies, like you said, they are paying, right? So they need to be able to trust in the quality of talent. How are you assuring quality talent?
So I think the first thing is to roll on the testimonials of other organizations that have done it successfully, like Outsource Global in Abuja, like Andela, for example. So when I talk to clients and I'm trying to open them up, two things. Number one is to show them our little success story, right? That's the first thing. Then number two is to then show them the success stories of other collaborators that we have in the space and say, hey, see, if Nigeria does not have a pool of amazing talent, Andela would not be hiring for the Microsofts, the top companies in the US. And I think the third one, just to add one, is to now be much more experimental with the process, because many companies then want to say, can you give us the first 20? I'll give you a very interesting example. There's a fintech in the US that we're talking to, right? They want to hire over 200 people at once to be on the IT support team. They've outsourced to India all their lives. They're about 6 years old. But then I'm talking to them about, testing the Nigerian market. So they're saying, let's start with 5 to see how this 5 will do. And then we'll scale it from there. And once you're able to get 10, 20 companies, then you can go back and then use the same success story to close other companies and say, hey, this works. It works. It's possible. And that's one of the things I also talked about at the beginning, because, when we started Utiva, we had to leverage on the first adopters, the early adopters. So we're also going to do the same thing with Fleet.
I see. Okay. So what you said around quality assurance is, I think it goes back to I don't know if it's town crying that you said.
Correct.
In terms of actually selling yourself,
evangelizing.
In terms of actually selling yourself. But I'm speaking strictly now to the company in terms of expectation. Okay. So when a talent comes to you, do they go through like an example? So that's what I mean. Like in terms of quality assurance. So how do you, what do they call it? I've forgotten how do you shift so that they are more confident in what Fleet has to provide?
So we do a much more collaborative approach, right? So the process that we adopt is also the process that the companies want us to use. There are several processes for hiring, right? And they are pretty much all the same. But the first thing we do is talk to the client about what process do you use internally? And the model is always like 4 things. Number one is, an initial assessment. It could be in form of a test or an examination. 10, 20 questions just to test your capability. And then first 2 interviews that you go through. And we try as much as possible to make the interviews very collaborative. We do it and they also do it. We're trying to leverage on technology to do that now, so that, because we're hiring at scale and you can't ask the HR managers to then be a part of all the interviews. So we're trying to use AI to do that, and then we can share the video of the recordings with them. But the third one, which I think is the most important, is the capstone project. Right? So there's a project that these, potential, gig workers or contractors then work on. And these projects are a replica of the internal projects of the organization. So if we're hiring an IT support staff for you, right? There's a project where a client calls and say, I have a very small problem. And within 5 minutes, you have to troubleshoot and solve the problem for that client. So you go through that, and then at the final stage is then looking at all the documents, making sure that we're able to pay you, you accept the contract, yada yada yada. So we've got an internal process that we use, but it's not a set in stone. It's a process that must align with the expectation of the client.
Yeah, I agree fully, because at the end of the day, the organization has their fixed way.
Correct.
You would probably not pass through the same method for hiring into Google as you would Microsoft. Just an example.
Yeah, correct.
So the thing now is, you have a pool of talents, but what of people listening now that want to be part of that pool, that they believe so much in themselves in terms of their capability and ability? How do they get into that pool?
So there are 3 things at the top of my mind that I would say that you have to do if you really want to come into the tech space and become successful in the tech space. The
Not
first
just
would
tech
be-
space.
Okay.
Your particular.
Oh,
pool.
okay. Utiva.
Fleet,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's still within the same, framework. The first is speaking with someone, on the Utiva team to gain a lot of clarity. We have a tool that you can easily use, utiva.io/tests. It can, within just answering 10 questions, it will suggest the best course for you, right? But I still recommend that you talk to someone on the Utiva team to get a lot of clarity, to understand what you're getting into, to know the value in the space. So just easily just go to any of the Utiva social platform, find Utiva online, reach out to someone, talk to someone. Then when you've spoken with someone, and you've decided on the best course that you want to be a part of or you want to learn, you have to realize that you will have to do the work, by learning, showing up in class, doing all those things. Enroll in the Utiva program and let us mentor you and coach you and support you. We have over 10 different courses that you can learn. We have over 100, support system, from the coaches to the mentors to the trainers to the Utiva internal team, and then other people within the ecosystem that are cheerleading you and helping you to become successful. But one other thing I need to mention is you need to complete the journey, because if you don't complete that journey, you're not certified. There's no stamp on you that, hey, this lady is a Utivan, and as much as it might get very tiring along the way when you're learning the course and you feel like giving up, don't give up. Continue to learn, complete that journey. And when you complete the Utiva journey, you get a Utiva certificate, which is accredited in the US by ACTD, that's the American Council for Training and Development in Florida. And getting that certification, finally then places a stamp on you, and then you're part of our pool. And, you now begin to enjoy life from there as a tech person, and other opportunities might now begin to come your way.
Okay, so that is an entry when a person lacks the skill.
Yeah.
If they already have the skill, what do they do?
Oh, yeah. So we have a fleet apprenticeship program. If you already have the skill, this is fantastic. The fleet apprenticeship program is a program that is open to people who are not within. It's also open to those who are within the Utiva ecosystem and those who are not within the Utiva ecosystem. So you can also join, right, the apprenticeship program. Just apply for the fleet apprenticeship. Send an email to anyone on the Utiva team, like info@utiva.io, and say, hey, I'm a data scientist. I learned data science here. And maybe also attach your certificate, right? And say, I want to be a part of the fleet apprenticeship, right? Then we'll send you an application. The application will then, some sort of evaluate, because if you say something, we want to evaluate your capacity. If you're good, we accept you into the apprenticeship program. The value of the apprenticeship program is that from day one, we're placing you with an organization, and then you earn, while you're working with that organization.
I see. Okay, so another thing actually came to my mind about the outsourcing. Mm-hmm. So is the outsourcing continual? When I say continual, I mean, if I am outsourced through you, is it a one-time thing? Because I do know that a company, obviously, the company is not doing it for free. For example, Andela. Yeah. So is it like a continual thing where, say, probably I'm working for contract. Mm-hmm. I'm signing a contract deal through Utiva or through Fleet with Google that is going to last 10 months. Yeah. After that, Utiva Fleet still has my back in terms of reassigning me somewhere else. Or is it a total, you've been handed over to Google, then we leave you, so we let you be, then you just take over from there.
It depends on the arrangements, and there are 3 different models. The first is such that the company is saying, we've got a short-term project that we are working on, and we are looking to augment our talents. Can you give us 3 cybersecurity and 1 data scientist to join our team, at least to finish that project? That is a very temporal engagement, right? We bring our talents, get them on the project, they earn, they get out. And it's your choice. If you don't want to be a part of that, that's good. The second option is where the company then say, we're looking for a contractor, to work with our team, on this particular project, or just join our team. And they pay us to pay you, right? Because they don't want to manage the entire burden of, hiring you directly, so they pay us to pay you. For that, it's not temporal. That's quite a long-term engagement. And the third one is where the company says, find us XYZ. We want to hire upfront. We will pay them directly. We'll sign a contract with them. That's the third model, right? I think the first one is the riskiest, because we are just placing you on a temporal project. But the good thing on the other side is that, the value of growth is in the exposure. So for some of our talents that haven't had the opportunity to get on a full-time role or a contract-based role that is long-term, they can then do a contract-based role that is short-term. That also helps them to then transition from the short-term to the long-term, because now they have more on their resume and on their profile, So that's pretty much how we think about it.
And if the company might say a temporary sort of project, and you do really well, and they decide to keep you. So there are two key questions I have around this. And the first is, do you pay your talents in the currency the company is paying them? Do you pay them in that currency, or do you convert to Naira? Okay. And the second is, what was the second? Please answer the first.
I think many talents are now lucky, because we are starting fleet at the time that the currency is much more, the exchange is much more stable, so it doesn't make any difference again. If you earn in dollars, or you earn in Naira, the exchange rate is much more stable, and that's the value today, right? Our aspiration, is to, because we're building a product called Entrova, which is a multi-currency, solution for paying international workers. It's much more. We are much more excited about that too. We're building it in-house, and that means that a talent that works from Uganda can have a wallet in USD, and you can be paid directly into that wallet, as against paying in your local currency. And I've heard a lot of employees or contractors say, I want to earn in USD, for several reasons. I think one of the most exciting reasons for them is not even the exchange rate, is the fact that they can then document for future references that, I'm earning in dollars. So if they move abroad, for example, they want to get, to plug into the financial ecosystem abroad, get a house, you rent a house and all this stuff. They can tender that and say, I have been earning in dollars, for the past 10 months, Yeah.
So basically, you with Entrova, you could earn in that particular currency and still be able to move your money around or convert on platform to your own local currency.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's quite interesting. What is the level of transparency? Because I like I told you, I also work with companies out there. So what is the level of transparency that people with skill should expect?
Yeah. So from the one you're signing a contract, I think that many of the talents understand that this is a business, right? And we have a contractual agreement with the employer to take a certain amount of money, right? And then you sign a contract, to accept the job at another certain amount of money, So let's say the company pays us, and I hear this and that. I think this is a time to start to educate the talent ecosystem. The company pays the company $3,000, and then they pay you $1,500, right? Do you accept the contract to take the job on $1,500? If yes, that is what you earn. Because on the company side, there's a lot of costs. The cost of setting you up, for the job, the cost of continuously negotiating the contract and making sure that the job, goes on well.
There are also people getting paid within the company
and
that
need to stay. So
there is no denying the company operational cost, and even after taking care of operational costs, there still needs to be profit because it's a business. But the question about transparency is, how transparent is it to the candidates in terms of, this is what I'm earning? I don't know if that makes sense.
I don't think there's any organization that shares what the company is paying them, because that's not because the organization is not the one that is hiring you. That's what the talent.
No, I'm not talking about the organization. I'm talking about fleet itself, being transparent to them in terms of.
But that's what I'm saying. So the fleet doesn't have to be transparent to you in terms of its revenue. Because remember that it is fleet that hires you and then places you to work with this company, right? So you don't have any contractual agreement with that company that you are actually a staff.
you
are a contractor that is placed by fleets.
That's for the first two types, because you mentioned three types.
Yeah, for the first two types.
The last one,
the last type, what we do, what we do is that you are working directly with the company. The company is not paying your salary. So your contractual relationship is between you and that company. And we don't even have to be transparent because the company sends you your contract directly. We only take a 5% finder fee, and it's not from you. It's from the organization. And the reason I'm trying to clarify this is because we need to educate the ecosystem. Because I've heard a lot of people say, they're paying this company more and they're paying me less. I'm like, no. Your agreement is your agreement, right? Your agreement is with this company as a contractor. And then the company then outsources you out to another. Yeah, that's the model.
I think 5% is actually fair.
We're going to go a lot higher than 5%.
That's my point. It could even be higher, a lot higher.
Yeah.
But for the last one out of the three, at least is sort of one-off. I don't know. Even if it is not one-off, still coming from the company to fleet.
Yeah.
Also, I just think there is a certain kind of mentality with Nigerians in terms of the company is getting so much money and I'm getting less.
I don't think it's a Nigerian thing. I think it's a global thing, because I hear this more even with talents outside the country than even Nigeria. I hear it more with Indians. I hear it a lot with Americans. Everybody has I used to be an employee too, and everybody has this mindset that, the company is making $300 million per annum. Why am I being paid $2,000? Because every employee sees everything from the lens of himself. But as a company, you're seeing the entire thing from everything that is happening in the company. And then the company also needs to be profitable to return back profits to its shareholders. Yeah.
Right. Can you speak a bit more about Entrova? I know we touched slightly on it in terms of talents being able to manage their. But is that the main focus for it? Or
it's a lot more than that. So I have done a lot in the talent development space, and one major thing that I realize is that international expansion from the talent side of things is the biggest aspiration of companies and organizations. So in the next 30 years, over 20 million companies would have to hire internationally. So what we have built with Entrova is a single API-based infrastructure, a single technology platform that helps the employer to pay Entrova, or to load their wallets with all the payments that they want to do to their international contractors. And from that same platform, easily and seamlessly pay all their talents, what they need to earn. But it's a lot more than that, because then we realize that these talents are saying, we want to earn pension too, right? We want to earn extra benefits. As an international worker, you want to be able to get a payday loan. Salary is coming, but you need a quick access to credit. As an international worker, you need a digital SIM card, because then you want to connect to a much more global ecosystem and make calls with international line. All that will be given to international workers on that same platform, from eSIM to payday credit for international workers to multi-wallet and multi-currency wallet, so that you can have your money in dollars, in pounds, whatever currency, and then be able to earn your pension and earn all the benefits, and then maybe also save, for the future on the same platform.
There's a level of depth and complexity that in that sort of platform.
Yeah.
Because you already run two Utiva fleets, right? That alone, if a person starts that as a startup, it is something that will probably take 5 to 10 years of their time to fully perfect and maybe sell it to Google or something. So how are you managing all that, and what sort of talents do you have within to build? Because that maybe you are entering into partnership with like other companies, like Paystack, for example, that manages money, and there's also dealing with the internal I don't know if I should say political economic system, where certain governments do not want you to undo external currency. So how are you managing all that? First, in terms of the technology, building it when you have other focuses too, and secondly, how are you managing having to deal with other currencies and the technology behind that?
I mean, so we've got a very, very super smart engineering team. So all these things I just talked about has been built already, and we're launching by next month. They've built a solution that helps you to sign your contract digitally on the same platform. They built a solution that helps the employer to load their wallets. They've built a solution that gives multi-currency, wallets, Naira, USD, GBP to the employees or the contractors, they've built all that. They've built a platform that helps you to onboard many of your international employees and contractors. They've built a KYC, or they've integrated a KYC so that you can know each talent. They've integrated a KYB so that you can know the business. All these have already been done by the engineering team. In terms of complexity, my commitment to the next 10 years of my life is to do a business that is extremely very tough. Extremely very tough. In fact, if it's not tough, I'm no longer interested. And that's why I went into a ranch, for example. I own a ranch, and ranch is very tough because rearing animals are very tough. That's why I'm building another company that is extremely very tough. If it's just going to be developing curriculum, training people, getting people to learn tech skills, I've done that for the past 5 years. I don't want to do any other simple thing again. I want to do something tough, and tough is good. Why? Because it stretches you. It forces you to really learn more. You don't know the depth of your capability as an entrepreneur until you get into something that is very tough. But the bigger value is that the barrier to entry is extremely very high. Unlike training, anybody can set up a training company. So that means I'm going to protect, if we win, not if, when we win, we're going to protect our space for the next 10 years. Not anybody can just wake up and build a tenant and multi-currency global infrastructure for hiring. So I'm really committed to doing that. But then I need to hand over Utiva to the right leadership, which we have internally. I'm not going to call their names, but we have great people that can lead Utiva. But this technology is what will power fleets. So fleets cannot really scale without Entrova. That's why we are launching Fleet and Entrova in the same era.
Agreed, but there are many fleets that without Entrova
they're
so
using
you can easily still scale fleets. But Entrova itself is quite an interesting system. You mentioned something when you were describing it. I think you mentioned something about an API based. So making it available as an API, are you saying there could be other vendors that could also leverage on Entrova on their platform?
That's simply what we are building. So for example, let me give you a little bit of an example and context into this. A company in the US wants to pay employees in 10 countries because they have someone in Uganda, someone in Nigeria, someone in Philippines and Pakistan and all that. On our platform, the employer just loads the wallet weighs $20,000 and then say pay these 30 people X amount of money, and then the platform pays them, right? But at the back end, we are not the one actually executing the payments. We've got integration because we're API based, we're integrated to other local vendors, and that's pretty much or other local payroll platforms. So it's easy for us to scale and get into 90 countries in just 2 days because it's just API based. We're integrating with local vendors or local payroll platforms that I execute in those countries. And they also understand the compliance and the regulatory requirements in their country. So with those burden will not be on us.
Okay. I think that's the smart move because those are the things that I actually think might be the biggest barrier because
certainly.
you need to deal with a lot, especially when it comes to government regulations. And you are now dealing with a lot of governments because if you only deal with only Nigeria government you stay too long there, talk less of every other one. I think that's quite an interesting platform. And you said other people might be able, other businesses might also be able to leverage on Entrova at a point in time.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Right. But probably not at the first launch.
At the first launch, the goal, if you're trying to pay your international workers, you can leverage on Entrova.
I see. Quite interesting.
Okay.
So I want to move to now the companies. So the companies hiring. So how do you think the rise of remote work has started influencing how companies hire or how they look at hiring? Because you did say that they are in the next 10 years, I don't know the particular statistics you mentioned, but in the next 10 years, there will be many companies that are actually looking at hiring international talent.
Correct.
So how is that changing companies at the core internally? And one key thing also is for a company like mine that I work, MTN, I think this is already a thing.
Correct.
For
Long
a
time
while,
ago.
right? So the point is now maybe many companies scaling, just entering into their $1 billion or billionaire phase are starting to realize that. So how is the rise of remote work actually changing companies currently?
I think as we close the gap of geographical separation. Chief executive officers are then realizing that, smart talents are based everywhere. So many C-suite executives are they're waking up to the reality that talents are universally distributed, that talents are based everywhere, and they're trying to place a bet on hiring them. So it's not even about being a multi-billion-dollar company. A company that is just a team of 4 people might have people geographically distributed. Now, but the second thing which I found most exciting is building a culture of diversity into the business helps open up the business or the company into several streams of opportunities that they could unearth. And employers are saying, why not hire across continents so that these guys bring to the company, the insights, and the, knowledge of those multiple countries. And it's good for scale. Because when you look at economies that are really thriving, it's the diversity. The fact that they've opened up their countries to the countries to lots of people, and then those guys bring in those international, experience and knowledge. And I think that's one of the things that is actually behind the greatness of remote work. The fact that companies are now placing a bet on internet. On the cost side, it's cheaper, for many companies, right? It's way cheaper. Yeah.
For that, in terms of on the cost side, it being cheaper, when companies hire from outside the country and those people sit there, those companies need to pay taxes on those talents, or is it that the taxes are less? I want to understand how that works.
So when we say cheaper, it's not necessarily because of taxes, right? Cheaper in the sense that if you hire remotely, then you don't have to invest heavily on a physical infrastructure. Right, that is half the burden. So, for example, over 40% of operational costs of many companies go into owning a physical infrastructure. So why not just outsource a lot? Then the second part is the complexity that has to come with managing certain type of expertise. So, for example, your business is a fintech business, and you don't have an internal expertise into managing, call center. Because managing a call center is a lot of work. Just outsourcing to another organization that does well with managing call centers, takes off the burden of call center from you, because all you just want to see is the results, the outcome. So the burden of management is another thing that is quite very operationally intensive, and then it could be very costly and expensive, right? But then there's a value with, not paying the compelled, the government compelled and the regulatory required, benefits that you must pay, because you are a startup, right? And then the government say you must pay pension, you must pay, this, you must pay, you must pay sick allowance, you must do all those things, right? If you outsource, then you take that entire burden off you. You don't have to pay all that, and that cost is saved, right? And these are the things that actually motivate international companies to say you are going to outsource, right? But I think on the heavy side is the cost of management, and then the physical infrastructure that they don't always have, to spend money on.
So you've talked about how candidates that wants to get in contact.
Yeah.
Now, companies that need you to hire for them, how do they do that?
Oh yeah, just reach out to us. Let's. This is the most important part. this is selling the business, right? Just reach out to us. We've got over 100,000 people within our ecosystem, from junior talents to senior talents. We're able to help you find the right technology talents for your business. And one of the unique values that we have, aside the fact that we have the very huge, network of talent and database, is then that we are able to do very rigorous assessments to ensure that the talent that is doing your job, is very solid, And I think another problem that many of the employers have is the very fast transition of this talent into other jobs, right? The attrition rate could be very high. When you work with us, while the attrition rate is high, the substitution rate and the replacement rate is super fast, right? Or it's super high. So if your talent leaves, you're able to replace within just 24 hours, and then your business moves on, So have a conversation with us, talk to us. It's quite a very fast process because we've done this multiple times. It could be very slow for people who don't have access to database and network of employers or potential employers. But for us, if you're asking for any talent, we're able to provide you within a few hours, And I want to talk about the last value that we have, which is because we came from training, because training was our foundation. If you hire 200 people from us, we would not leave them to you. We will continue to train them in that art, in that skill. So let's say you hire 200 IT support, as part of their KPI is continue to learn at Utiva. So that they have to continue to develop.
Are there extra costs attached to that?
You know what? No, it's zero. It's zero. I mean, because you're paying us. We don't want your business to go down, because if your business goes down because the talents are not good, we lose. So you don't pay a dime for continuous learning. And we continue to expose those talents to training, soft skill training, technical training, capstone projects, just to continue to develop them. Yeah.
Okay. So as we are rounding up.
Oh, we're rounding up. I was enjoying it.
So for youths or talents looking to go or break into tech, which I have to say it's not an easy process, because many people first they see the tech money, probably they saw it on Twitter, they had Tech Bro and they decide to go. Yeah. But after 2 weeks of going into it, they find out that it's not that easy. So for talents looking to break into the ecosystem, what would you advise minus signing up on YouTube?
I mean, the first thing I would advise is that if something is going to pay you a lot of money, if something is going to get you to the point of greatness, don't ever believe anybody tells you that it's easy. It's not easy. It's really going to demand that you do the hard work, that you work very hard. The first advice will be find a community that can really support you through that journey, because it might be very difficult and demanding. Find a community that would continue to inspire you and cheerlead you, regardless of your background. I've seen nurses that have gone into data science, CHISOM. I've seen people who studied biology have gone into cybersecurity. So it's possible, but it might be demanding, because you would have to wake up in the middle of the night and write codes and, read and study and write user story and design. Find a community of people that will continue to cheerlead you. Find a community that will give you a mentor, a community that will give you a coach, so that you don't walk the journey in isolation. If you're finding something difficult and you're about giving up, the most exciting thing is to stay in a community where other people have already figured it out, and they can tell you, guys, it's not that difficult now. This is what I did. So don't isolate yourself. Isolation and greatness don't work together. Find a community where you can be supported. And of course, Utiva is the community. Again, back to Utiva that I do want to mention.
Lastly, if you were to give an advice to a younger version of yourself, pre-2010, what would you tell him?
Advice plenty. I think the first thing I would tell my younger version is people will tell you that it's impossible. Do it regardless. The second advice I would say is people would make you feel that you're not doing enough. You will see some of your friends on social media buying Jeeps and buying all these things. It doesn't matter. It wouldn't matter. You buy enough of your Jeep. I think I have 2 now. 3 actually. 1 in the UK and 2 here. And this was 2010. If you have a Jeep around me, I would ever think that it must be a big thing. Don't worry. You will get to your own level. But the most important advice for me is do the very, very, extremely, very difficult thing. That thing that is difficult is what you should be doing. Why? Because if you figure it out, the world will pay you a lot of money, for doing the difficult thing. If it is easy, trust me, it won't last for too long, because a lot of people will jump into it because it's easy. But if you're doing the difficult thing, so for example, if you're going into a career, find a career that is difficult. Like cybersecurity, like software engineering, like data science. If you're going into being an entrepreneur, don't just say I'm going to open a place and sell cement, and I'm talking to one of my mentees now. Don't just say I'm going to open a place and sell cement. That's easy. Anybody can open a place. Go build a product that is difficult, that solves a very, very painful problem that customers want to have solved, and forever you will be made for doing that. And you have to think long term. If you don't stop me, a lot of advice, so you have to think long term, next 10 years, next 20 years, that problem you will solve today that will continue to help you earn money forever. It's what you should focus on if you're quite very young. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I look forward to having you again.
Yeah, I would come back when we built Utiva built Fleet to a much more successful place.
Of course.
Thank you, bro. Really great time talking to you.